At a paper mill, a worker tries clearing a jam from a large industrial roller. Suddenly, he's violently pulled into the machine. This is a classic failure of lockout-tagout. Power must be cut and locked out before maintenance. A tow truck has parked with its steel winch cable stretched taut across a residential street. A scooter rider, completely unaware of the nearly invisible hazard, drives at speed directly into it. He is violently clotheslined and thrown from the bike. This is gross negligence. Any cable stretched across a public way must be made highly visible with flags and cones, and the area should have been completely blocked off from traffic. In an auto repair shop, a mechanic carefully guides a pickup truck into a service bay. The driver suddenly accelerates instead of braking, pinning the worker against the wall. This shows the inherent danger of being in a vehicle's path. Spotters must always maintain a safe distance and have a clear escape route. Inside a textile factory, workers stand near a massive thread winding machine where hundreds of threads are fed at high speed. One worker gets too close, and a thread snags his clothing, violently pulling him off his feet and dragging him toward the intake rollers. This machinery presents a severe entanglement risk. Proper machine guarding is essential to create a barrier between workers and moving parts. Additionally, loose clothing should never be worn, and emergency stop controls must be clearly marked. An instructor and a child ride a tandem zip line over a deep ravine. Suddenly, the child slips completely out of their harness. The instructor heroically manages to grab and hold on to the child as they speed down the line. This is a shocking failure of pre-ride safety protocols. All harnesses, carabiners, and safety lines must be inspected and double-checked before every single use. A forklift loads a stack of heavy industrial tires onto a truck bed, where another worker is waiting. The load is unstable and suddenly topples over, crushing the man beneath its immense weight. This is a fatal mistake of being in the line of fire. Workers must never be under a suspended or unstable load. The load should have been stacked securely, and workers should clear the area during lifting operations. A man enters a hardware store, grabs a can of flammable liquid, and immediately starts a fire in an aisle. This isn't a workplace accident, but a deliberate act of arson. For any business, this shows the importance of having multiple, clearly marked fire extinguishers, unobstructed emergency exits, and a well-rehearsed evacuation plan. At a tire shop, a mechanic works on a large truck tire lying on the ground. Without any warning, the tire explodes with incredible force, throwing the mechanic through the air. This catastrophic event is why inflating large tires requires strict safety protocols. Overpressurization or damage to the tire's structure can turn it into a bomb. All large tires must be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, which is designed to contain the explosive energy. Workers should never lean or stand directly over a tire as it is inflated. At a loading dock, at a busy port, workers are loading a flatbed truck near the water's edge. A forklift operator, after placing a load, suddenly accelerates forward at high speed instead of reversing. The machine plunges off the pier, landing directly on a worker standing below and pushing him into the water. This appears to be a tragic case of pedal misapplication. In complex environments, operators must remain hyper-vigilant. Maintaining clear safety zones for pedestrians is essential to provide an escape route in case of operator error. In a factory setting, a worker operates a large rolling press. He reaches over the active machine, likely to clear a jam or adjust the material being fed into it. His arm gets caught in the powerful intake rollers, and in a horrific instant, he is pulled completely into the machine. This demonstrates the absolute necessity of proper machine guarding. All moving parts and pinch points must be covered. For any adjustments or maintenance, a complete lockout-tagout procedure must be performed to de-energize the equipment. In a mining tunnel, a worker pushes a heavy cart toward an elevator shaft. He opens the protective gate and, without verifying that the elevator car is actually there, pushes the cart into the void. He and the cart plummet down the open shaft. Safety interlocks that prevent gates from opening unless the elevator is present are critical. This tragic assumption highlights the rule to always look and confirm before you proceed. A person walks down a narrow alleyway between warehouse buildings. Behind them, a forklift carrying a load that obstructs the operator's forward view is traveling in the same direction. The operator, unable to see the pedestrian, continues forward and runs the person over. This is a primary rule of forklift safety. If your forward view is blocked by a load, you must travel in reverse. Using a horn at intersections and having designated pedestrian paths are also crucial measures to prevent this type of accident. At a lumber yard, a forklift operator attempts to lift a tall, heavy, and unstable stack of wooden panels. As the forks rise, the machine's center of gravity shifts forward, causing it to become dangerously unbalanced. The entire forklift tips forward, sending the massive load crashing down onto a nearby worker who is instantly pinned beneath the immense weight. This fatal error was caused by exceeding the forklift's rated load capacity. Operators must be trained to read and understand their vehicle's load chart and never attempt to lift a load that is too heavy or unstable. In a scrap metal recycling plant, a worker climbs into a massive baling press to clear a jam, placing himself in an extremely dangerous position. While he is inside, an excavator operator working nearby drops a load of scrap, startling the man. As he tries to get out, the press unexpectedly begins its compression cycle. The powerful hydraulic ram activates, trapping and crushing the man inside the machine before he can escape. This is a horrifying failure of lockout, tag-out procedures. Before any worker enters a machine for maintenance, all energy sources must be completely shut off and locked to prevent accidental activation. This procedure would have saved his life. In a cramped warehouse aisle, two employees stand talking, oblivious to the high-reach forklift operating behind them. The operator lifts a pallet high into the racking, but the load is unbalanced. The entire pallet of goods slides off the forks and falls onto the workers below. Pedestrians must always be aware of their surroundings and never stand under a suspended load. Inside an automated factory, a worker leans over a conveyor, putting himself in the path of a robotic arm. The machine activates unexpectedly, striking the man. As colleagues rush to help, a second robot further down the line malfunctions, swinging its arm and hitting another worker. This chain reaction points to a systemic failure of the safety systems. Proper light curtains, pressure mats, or sensors should automatically shut down all robots in a zone the moment a human enters. At a gas station, an attendant is crouched down, cleaning a spill. The driver of a white SUV, who had just been refueling, gets into their vehicle and pulls away, without checking their blind spots. The car turns directly into the low-profile attendant, knocking him over and dragging him several feet before stopping. This shows the critical importance of situational awareness for both drivers and workers. Drivers must be vigilant in pedestrian-heavy areas, while ground workers should use cones to create a visible safety barrier around their immediate workspace. At a recycling facility, a man is using a long pole to push material into a large industrial shredder. He is leaning far over the machine's opening in a precarious position. Another worker approaches from behind and throws more material into the shredder's hopper. This sudden influx causes the machine to violently grab the first worker's pole, pulling him in after it. This horrific accident was caused by a complete lack of machine guarding and poor communication between workers. At a factory, a man walks through an open area below a mezzanine. Without warning, a massive, heavy roll of fabric falls from the level above, landing directly on top of him. This incident highlights the absolute importance of securing all materials stored at height, using tow boards, netting, or other barriers to prevent objects from falling. In a warehouse, a forklift operator places a crate on a truck. He then gets off the forklift, leaving it running with the forks raised and, most importantly, without setting the parking brake. As he walks in front of the machine to adjust the load, the forklift begins to roll forward on the slight incline. He is trapped and crushed between the multi-ton vehicle and the truck. This fatal accident was caused by ignoring the most fundamental rule of forklift safety. Before dismounting, always lower the forks, set the parking brake, and put the machine in neutral. A forklift operator begins to raise the forks. At that exact moment, a scooter carrying 2 people drives directly into their path, colliding hard with the rising steel forks. This incident highlights the chaos of a poorly managed work zone. There is a severe lack of situational awareness from both the scooter driver and the forklift operator. Industrial yards require clear, designated pathways for vehicles and pedestrians, good lighting, and for all personnel to remain alert. In a poorly lit workshop, 2 men are working on the floor near what appears to be a compressed gas cylinder. Suddenly, it explodes in a massive fireball. Gas cylinders are potential bombs if mishandled. They must always be stored upright, secured from falling, and inspected for damage before use. A man operates a large industrial lathe, leaning over the rapidly spinning chuck. His loose jacket sleeve gets snagged, and he is instantly and violently pulled into the machine, spinning at a terrifying speed before a coworker hits the emergency stop. This is a classic entanglement accident. The number 1 rule when working with rotating machinery is absolutely no loose clothing, untied long hair, or jewelry. These items can be grabbed in a fraction of a second. Additionally, a chuck shield could have prevented this contact. At a gas station next to a busy roundabout, a chaotic car accident occurs. One of the involved cars rolls backward, out of control, directly into the station forecourt, striking an unsuspecting attendant sitting in a chair. This incident underscores the risk of working near live traffic. Protective barriers, like bollards, are essential to shield work areas from errant vehicles. A large truck reverses toward a loading bay, while a pedestrian walks directly into its path from behind. The driver, with no visibility in this massive blind spot, continues backing up and runs the person over completely. This is a tragic and preventable blind spot accident. Large vehicles must be equipped with functioning backup alarms and cameras. Crucially, a dedicated spotter should always guide a reversing truck, maintaining constant visual contact with the driver. In a busy shipping yard, a man walks across the pavement while completely absorbed by his phone. He fails to notice an approaching forklift and steps directly into its path, getting struck and knocked down. This is a clear case of distracted walking in a high-risk environment. Using a phone while walking in an active yard with heavy machinery should be strictly forbidden. Pedestrians must maintain full situational awareness at all times. A mechanic performs welding work underneath a car on a lift. Sparks from his tool ignite a flammable liquid on the floor, likely spilled fuel, and the vehicle erupts into a massive ball of fire. The mechanic is forced to scramble to safety from the inferno. This is a failure of hot work safety procedures. Before any welding or grinding, the area must be completely cleared of all flammable materials, including liquids, vapors, and oily rags. A fire extinguisher must be within arm's reach, and it is also standard practice to disconnect the vehicle's battery. Inside a material processing facility, a worker manages heavy stone slabs positioned near a cutting machine. Suddenly, a large slab becomes unstable and tips forward due to a shift in weight, creating a hazardous situation for the operator in the fall zone. This incident highlights the critical need to secure heavy loads during processing and reminds us to never stand in the direct line of fire where unstable materials might fall. In a chemical processing plant, workers are inspecting a large industrial tank when an apparent valve failure causes a sudden, rapid release of pressure. The resulting release of energy disrupts the immediate area, serving as a stark reminder that pressure vessels require rigorous maintenance. Workers must always verify pressure levels and follow strict lockout procedures before approaching such equipment. An auto mechanic is working near an open service pit while a vehicle is being positioned nearby. The driver appears to lose control, possibly confusing the pedals, causing the car to accelerate suddenly into the pit area. To prevent such accidents, clear communication between drivers and ground guides is vital, and physical barriers should be used around open pits during vehicle maneuvering. A group of workers moves a tall metal scaffold structure across a paved area without noticing the overhead environment. As they push the frame, the top makes contact with high-voltage power lines, sending an electrical current down to the workers. This scenario emphasizes the importance of surveying the area for overhead hazards and maintaining a safe distance from power lines at all times. A vehicle is being loaded onto a flatbed tow truck when the securing mechanism fails, causing the car to roll rapidly backward off the ramp toward the operator. This mechanical failure illustrates why operators should never stand directly behind or below a load being winched. Regular equipment checks on cables and winches are essential to prevent failure during recovery operations. At a construction site, a crane lifts a bundle of heavy metal beams when the rigging suddenly slips. The load detaches midair and falls to the ground near the workers. This incident underscores that proper rigging techniques and load balancing are essential for crane safety, and establishing a clear exclusion zone underneath lifted loads is mandatory to protect personnel. In a busy commercial kitchen, staff transport a large, open container of hot liquid when one worker loses their footing. The container tips over, spilling the high-temperature contents onto the floor and the personnel. To minimize thermal risks, slip-resistant footwear is crucial, and carts with sealed lids should always be used when transporting hot substances. At a metal recycling yard, a worker introduces an ignition source near a sealed metal drum. Residual fumes inside the container ignite instantly, causing a rapid expansion of gas and a concussive blast. This serves as a critical warning never to apply heat or open flames to sealed drums without verifying they are completely empty and purged of hazardous residues. A driver prepares to unload a truck filled with heavy timber logs, but as the side restraints are released, the load shifts due to gravity. One of the heavy timbers falls outward, striking the individual standing next to the truck. When releasing cargo straps, workers must always assume the load has shifted and stand clear or use remote release mechanisms to avoid the fall path. A machinist working with a long metal bar on a rotating lathe gets their loose clothing caught on the spinning material. Although they pull away just in time, this near miss demonstrates that loose clothing, gloves, and jewelry are major hazards near rotating machinery. Wearing proper fitted work attire is a primary defense against entanglement. On an elevated platform at an industrial plant, workers are positioned near a large piece of equipment. One man handles a flexible hose connected to the system. Suddenly, a coupling fails, and the pressurized hose whips around, dousing him with a powerful jet of chemicals. He is immediately engulfed in a vapor cloud and collapses. This incident underscores the extreme danger of pressurized systems. Hoses and their fittings must undergo regular inspection for wear and be properly secured to prevent catastrophic failure. Appropriate PPE, including full-face shields and chemical-resistant suits, is non-negotiable. In a textile factory, a worker tends to a massive fabric winding machine. He reaches over the large, rapidly spinning roll to make an adjustment. In an instant, his arm is caught, and the machine's immense power pulls his entire body in, wrapping him violently within the roll of fabric. His co-workers rush to his aid, desperately trying to halt the machine. For over a minute, they struggle with the controls and attempt to manually reverse the powerful mechanism to free their trapped colleague. This horrific entanglement is a direct result of inadequate machine guarding. A protective barrier with an interlock switch would have shut the machine down. This also serves as a grim reminder to never reach over moving parts. The chaotic rescue highlights the need for clear and practiced emergency stop procedures for all heavy machinery. Inside a busy workshop or warehouse, employees are engaged in their daily tasks. Without warning, a violent explosion erupts in the middle of the workspace, sending a shockwave and debris flying in all directions. The likely culprit is a catastrophic failure of a pressurized gas cylinder. Such cylinders must be stored securely upright, chained in place, and kept away from heat sources or areas where they could suffer physical impact. In a vast warehouse, an operator drives an electric pallet jack down an aisle lined with towering storage racks. He appears to be inattentive or fatigued as the vehicle slowly veers to the right. It makes a seemingly minor impact with the base of a shelving upright. But that's all it takes. The collision triggers a devastating domino effect, bringing down the entire aisle of heavy shelving in a matter of seconds. The operator barely manages to run to safety as tons of product come crashing down. This shows why rack protectors are vital and, more importantly, that operators must remain alert at all times, as fatigue can have catastrophic consequences. A worker is feeding material into a green industrial rolling machine. He is sitting directly on the machine's frame, an incredibly dangerous position right next to the powerful intake rollers. As he guides the material, his hand gets caught. He is instantly pulled in and crushed by the machine. This fatal incident was entirely preventable. The machine had no guarding at its point of operation, a fundamental safety violation. Workers must never place themselves on or near moving machinery. Guards, light curtains, or two-hand controls are essential to prevent such tragedies. In a factory setting, a worker operates a large rolling press. As he guides material into the machine's intake, his hand is suddenly caught. He is violently and instantly pulled completely into the powerful rollers. This tragic incident highlights a critical lack of point-of-operation guarding. Safety interlocks, light curtains, or two-hand controls are essential safeguards to prevent such immediate and horrific accidents. From a high vantage point on a construction site, a crane is lifting a platform with 3 workers on it. Suddenly, the rigging gives way, and the platform violently tilts. One of the workers loses his footing and plummets several stories to the ground below. Riding on loads or platforms not specifically designed for personnel is an extremely high-risk activity and is prohibited on most job sites. Only certified man baskets should be used for lifting personnel. At a port, a crane is lifting a large hopper over a truck. Multiple workers are standing around and on the truck, directly underneath the suspended load. Suddenly, the rigging fails, and the multi-ton hopper plummets, crushing the truck's cab and striking at least one person. The number 1 rule of crane safety is to never position yourself under a suspended load. A clearly marked exclusion zone must be established and maintained for all lifting operations. This incident was caused by a failure in the lifting gear, underscoring the need for certified riggers and thorough pre-lift inspections. Three workers stand near a stack of heavy steel I-beams resting on supports. The stack appears to be poorly secured. One man begins to unhook a strap, and the loss of that support causes the entire pile to become unstable. The heavy beams slide off their supports and cascade to the ground, pinning one of the workers underneath. His colleagues desperately try to move the immensely heavy beams to free him. This demonstrates a critical failure in material storage. Heavy, unsecured loads are a constant hazard. They must be properly stacked, chocked, and secured, and bindings should only be removed when the load is stabilized by a lifting device. Inside a textile factory, a man is operating a large warping machine with a massive rotating beam. As he works near the intake, his clothing gets caught by the powerful roller. He is instantly pulled off his feet and violently spun around as he's dragged into the machinery. His co-workers rush to stop the machine, but the incident has already occurred. This horrific accident underscores the danger of wearing loose clothing around rotating equipment. Furthermore, machines of this type must have emergency stops within easy reach and proper guarding to prevent any possibility of contact with moving parts. In a steel warehouse, a worker stands directly underneath a massive coil of sheet metal being moved by an overhead crane. Suddenly, the clamp holding the multi-ton roll fails, and the coil drops, instantly crushing the man below. This is an absolute violation of the most basic overhead lifting rule. Never, under any circumstances, position yourself under a suspended load. Safe zones must be clearly established and enforced. At an excavation site, several workers are standing perilously close to the edge of a deep pit while an excavator works above them. The operator swings the bucket, either misjudging the distance or not seeing the worker below, and knocks one man directly into the excavation. This highlights a severe lack of communication and site control. Workers on foot should never be in the swing radius of heavy equipment, and operators must ensure their path is clear before moving. In a heavy manufacturing plant, workers are gathered around a massive engine assembly being lifted by an overhead crane. The rigging suddenly gives way, and the entire multi-ton apparatus crashes to the floor, shattering on impact and narrowly missing several people. The incident was caused by a catastrophic rigging failure. All lifting equipment, including slings and shackles, must be inspected before each use and rated for a weight far exceeding the load. A crane operator lowers a large bundle of sacks into an open pit in a factory floor. A female worker stands on the edge to guide the load. As the heavy bundle swings, its momentum pushes her off balance, and she falls backward into the hole. Workers should never use their bodies to directly guide a suspended load. Taglines should always be used to control the load from a safe distance, away from fall hazards. Two technicians are working on a large CNC machine. As one of them leans in and touches a component, he receives a severe electrical shock, causing him to convulse and collapse. This points to either damaged wiring or a failure to properly de-energize and lock out the machine before beginning service work. Inside what appears to be a paper recycling facility, a worker is manually pushing material into the opening of a large industrial pulper. He leans too far over the unguarded opening, loses his footing, and is instantly pulled into the powerful machine. A large plume of dust and steam erupts from the machine. This tragedy was entirely preventable. The machine's feed opening must have been equipped with proper guarding and a feed system, like a conveyor belt, to eliminate the need for any worker to be near the point of operation. A worker wearing a hard hat walks backward into the path of a reversing cement mixer truck. The driver, likely unable to see him in the blind spot, continues to back up, striking the man and knocking him to the ground. All large vehicles must be equipped with backup alarms, and drivers should use a spotter when reversing in areas with pedestrian traffic. Pedestrians, in turn, must remain aware of their surroundings. A worker enters the safety enclosure of a large industrial robotic arm while it is still operational. The robot activates, moving swiftly along its programmed path, and pins the man against a stationary part of the cell. Safety interlocks on gates are designed to prevent this. They must never be bypassed. In a garage, two mechanics are working on a large, inflated truck tire that is not in a safety cage. The tire suddenly explodes with catastrophic force, throwing both men across the workshop. Inflating large tires must always be done within a reinforced safety cage to contain the explosive energy in case of a blowout. A worker stands next to a flatbed trailer heavily loaded with stacked steel I-beams. The load, which is not properly secured, suddenly shifts and slides off the side of the trailer, burying the man underneath. All heavy loads must be secured with appropriate chains or straps to prevent any movement during transport or unloading.